I know you think I'm crazy. I'm going to take on Sandy. This is Randy Kirk, and if anything that we're doing here on this channel is fun for you, or interesting, or valuable, please hit the like button, subscribe. You may want to get notifications. We're running a series right now on all the different car companies that are in competition with, or that are startups in the field of battery electric vehicles. And I'm shocked that not more people are watching these videos. I would recommend you watch the entire series because I think Lars did a great job in analyzing these competitive potentials into the future. Again, we're not just caring about these competitors because they're competitors to Tesla. We care about them because some of them need to be successful in order for us to get to the transition away from ICE cars and to a world that's 100% BEV. All right, let's get on to the subject for today. We are going to take on Sandy Munro. And quite frankly, some of you are going to complain that this is clickbait because I think Sandy is by and large 100% right, even on the subject of today. I can't compare myself to Sandy in terms of his capabilities in the field of manufacturing, in his analysis of these automobiles and how they're done and whatnot. However, I do have a huge background in vertical integration. I took my company, my plastics manufacturing company, from 100% virtual, where we had no building, no employees. Everything was done for us. We were a manufacturer, but we had absolutely nothing to do with anything that we were manufacturing other than selling it, and even had one of our other companies that was doing the invoicing. And we went from that to being 100% vertical. And by 100% vertical, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. Nobody is ever 100% vertical. And sometimes it makes no sense to even become slightly vertical. So when Sandy Munro and others that are not experienced in manufacturing go out and start talking about, yeah, the best thing about Tesla is how vertical they are, I don't want to give the impression that either A, Tesla is not 100% vertical, and they never will be, and B, there are plenty of aspects of Tesla where they've made conscious decisions not to go vertical and where they should never go vertical. And that if you're a small company that is emulating or trying to take a look at what Tesla does and doesn't do and try to become, that's what I tried to do in the Elon Musk method, was help small companies to become smarter at running their enterprises. Well, there could be a situation where you should not be vertical at all. So I'm going to start off with an example. I am a manufacturer of something called Thorn Buster tire liners. In fact, we just added a new Thorn Buster to our line. This is one that goes in electric. Actually, I think this is non-electric bikes with 5-inch wide tires. They're really super, super fat tires on bicycles. And I am a manufacturer of that product. Well, not really. I don't manufacture it. It's somebody else manufactures, and I buy it from them in bulk with no packaging, no branding, et cetera, et cetera. And I sell it under my brand, which is Thorn Buster. And I only sell it on Amazon. I don't sell it to bike shops. I don't sell it to wholesalers. I only sell it on Amazon. So I'm 100% vertical on my forward aspects of my business. The way I sell it, I go all the way to consumer. But on the purchasing side, I'm 100% virtual in that I don't make it. I do warehouse it. So I guess I'm slightly vertical. So I do warehouse it and I do ship it. And I do invoice it. Well, I don't invoice it. Actually, Amazon does all that for me as well. So it would make no sense for me to set up a factory based on my current volumes in order to make that product myself. I have, I forget what it is, 9 and 5. I have 14 different sizes now of that product. And I have 2 different brands. And the secondary brand does things in a slightly different way, which means I'd have to have another line for those. So to do all of those for the amount of volume that I do would make 0 sense for me to become a manufacturer of those items. And yet I have the expertise to do that. For 29 years, I was a manufacturer of bicycle tire liners. I had owned extruders. The extruders made the product. We packaged the product. We shipped it to wholesalers. Wholesalers shipped it to distributors, to dealers. The dealers sold to consumers. So it was a typical a business where we were fairly vertical in our integration on the manufacturing side and 100% normal in terms of distribution. We didn't skip over those distribution channels as Tesla does today and go all the way from manufacturer to consumer. So that's the two aspects of this vertical question versus not being vertical. Tesla has done an amazing job. I take zero away from their decision-making with regard to their verticality on the manufacturing side or their verticality with regard to the distribution side. I think they're doing it exactly right. I don't know enough to even go in and say that maybe they shouldn't make their own seats. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. If I spent a year or 6 months or 3 months working in the seat division and took a look at the seats they're making and took a look at the other seats that are available out there and costed them out and looked at it in terms of supply chain and everything else, I might be able to help them say, you know what? You shouldn't be making seats. As many of you know, and I've talked about before, I made plastic water bottles. Well, I made the bottles. We did the printing. We did that in-house. We made the screens. We actually bought the frames and stretched the screens across the frames and then burned the images into the screens and then put the screens up onto printers and did the silk screening onto the bottles. At one point, we made the caps. Okay, we injection molded the caps and we made them ourselves, and we made the poppets that go into the top of the caps. We made all those ourselves in our factory. We were 100% vertical in that regard. But at a certain point, we realized we weren't really very good at injection molding. Even though we made lots and lots of them, 5.5 million, something like that per year, it was enough volume for us to be injection molders in order to get the value that we wanted out of that integration. What did we want out of that integration? Well, we wanted the bottle cap to always be, if in this case, the cap is black and the bottle's blue, but if the cap was going to be exactly the same color as this bottle, we wanted to make sure as a manufacturer ourselves, we could make absolutely 100% sure that that cap was always the right color and that the quality was correct, that it always fit the bottle and didn't leak, et cetera, et cetera. So many benefits to being vertical is that you have all these controls over what you're doing. We also wanted to know that we could be in business. If we needed 1,000 of those black caps tomorrow, we could switch over our injection molder tomorrow or today and have those 1,000 tomorrow. That was totally our decision of whether we wanted to switch over or not. If I have it made by somebody else, maybe they got other ideas and they're not ready to switch over that rapidly. Maybe our molding equipment isn't even on that machine at that time, and they're busy with more important jobs or other people's jobs. So there's an advantage to that verticality in that I have flexibility, I have control over the quality, and I can make decisions to change the quality, to upgrade. I don't have to get involved in a conversation with the supplier about whether I'm going to make changes. So many advantages to being vertical, but we still made the decision no longer to make our own caps. Why? We found an injection molder who had lots and lots and lots of equipment, 25 years of experience of making things that size, who was very, very, very good, at very high quality and precision, who was precise with regard to their coloring, and who was only about 10 blocks away from our shop. We talked to them, we talked about price, and we realized that when it was all said and done, because of his volume and because of his equipment and because of his overhead and whatnot, he could basically sell us the cap for the same or less than we were already buying it. And I didn't have to employ a bunch of people to do it. I didn't have to employ a bunch of space to do it. And I could get it for virtually the same cost as I was getting it. And he promised me that it would give me the kind of versatility that I needed in terms of making changes and potentially even changing colors or changing product very rapidly if I was in a crunch. So at that point, the decision was made for me. Well, the same thing is true at Tesla. Tesla is not 100% vertical. Elon famously said, I need lots and lots of refined lithium in order to make batteries. I've decided to become vertical as a battery manufacturer, but I need refined lithium in order to do that, and there's not enough. I might have to become a refiner. And he let the word be known. He let all the existing refineries out there know, I'll buy as much as I can possibly get. But there wasn't enough. There still wasn't enough. So he says, you know what? I'm going to have to go in the refinery business. Now, it may be that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, enough refining capacity comes on board, and Elon might decide to sell that business. He might decide that it's no longer worth it for him to continue to make refined lithium, and he might find that there's plenty of suppliers out there that can get it to him for the right price, or even a lower price, or better quality, or whatever, closer to his shop. So there could be all kinds of reasons for him to change. The number one reason to not be and you know, you can go on from there to mining. He doesn't want to become a miner, but there's products like that within the building. He hasn't decided to go out and become vertical in tire manufacturing. He hasn't even decided to go out there and become vertical in brake manufacturing. There's a whole bunch of different products on the car that are made by suppliers. They have a long, long list of suppliers. And part of Investment Day, you may remember if you watched it, he talked about the integration that they have with their suppliers. That integration was sort of like the integration that I had with this guy down the street who was making the caps for my bottles. I was only 5 minutes away by car to go down the street and yell at him, or to have a lovely conversation, have a little lunch, and talk about things that I thought might need changing. To have my people go over there and say, hey, we're having a problem with a fit, whatever it might be, I could send my employees right over, and we could make sure that we were integrating the two jobs, the two manufacturing processes, so that there was no problems for me in terms of my end product and what I was shipping out to my customers. So let's talk about the biggest negative with regard to being vertical. When you're vertical, your buying department, the folks that are making buying decisions, will tend to start considering that as job done. Now, what if there's somebody else coming up with a new cap, and you're not aware of this new cap that is going to be a lot better than the current cap that you're making? What if that company is coming up with a better octavalve than what you're making? You're like, no, job done on octavalve. We don't need to talk to anybody else about our fluid systems, our heating systems, and water and air systems in the Model 3 and Model Y. We've got the octavalve, we're done. So people are not going, oh, should we be inviting in suppliers, inviting in vendors to come tell us about their latest, greatest thing when we've already got it solved? So there's a tendency for people to start saying, we've solved that, we don't need to talk to vendors anymore. That's a very big mistake. And even if you are primary, let's say, again, we go back to my example, making the bottle, and we were really, really good at making the bottle and really, really good at printing it. So are we going to talk to bottle manufacturers? Are we going to talk to printing companies about doing the printing for us? We really didn't spend any time at all talking to bottle makers or printers about taking over that job for us. And it might have been possible that they could do the job better. So this is you might call it a MBA class on vertical versus virtual. Our vertical versus using suppliers, and there's applications for both. And all I'm saying to Sandy Munro is not that he has made any errors truly in what he said. I think the error has been on emphasis, and the error on emphasis could cause you as a manager or owner to say, oh, I've just got to go vertical. It's all about going vertical. Boy, I've got to go vertical. No, that is not necessarily the case. You have to be able to prove that you have the case for going vertical, you have the expertise for going vertical, that you're wanting to put the CapEx and the manpower and the brain power into that vertical decision, that there isn't somebody out there that can do it better. Commonly, the people that can do it better might be in China or in Mexico or in the Philippines or in Taiwan. Are in Singapore. They might be anywhere around the world where they have more expertise, lower labor costs, lower total overhead, lower cost of even building the mold. Sometimes our entire reason for buying something in China was because the mold cost was lower. Sometimes we would buy the molds in China and ship those in even to our down the street plastics injection molder, because that mold overseas was cheaper than he could build it right down the street. So there's no way in this amount of time, I could spend another hour, probably 2 hours, maybe 3 hours doing a full tutorial on how to make the decisions. The list would be long as to why you would choose to continue to use normal distribution on the forward side of verticality, or why you would continue to use suppliers for raw materials, for finished goods, for OEM applications, for printing, for packaging, and all the rest. There's so many different reasons for making those choices that, again, it could take me hours and hours and hours to talk about it. But I did want to at least bring up the subject, both for you if you're in the business and it makes a difference with regard to how you conduct your own business, but also just as someone who's a fanboy watching the whole Tesla thing, or you're an investor watching the entire Tesla thing, look at verticality from the standpoint of it's not always the smartest thing to do, and what might that vertical decision mean in terms of long-term, the long-term real costs of doing business. Anyway, hope this has been useful. If it has, press the like button. If it hasn't, don't push the unlike button. This has been Randy Kirk. I've really enjoyed talking to you today.